A profound mode of perception exists that the vast majority of humanity simply never unlocks. This is not due to a lack of some mystical talent, nor is it because this ability is a hidden superpower reserved exclusively for a chosen few at birth. Rather, it remains dormant because accessing it demands a specific physiological and mental condition, a state of being that the average nervous system is simply not trained to attain. We are talking about a level of internal coherence that is incredibly precise and relentlessly stable. When an individual achieves this, they transform into an observer, capable of detecting subtle energetic patterns within the quantum field, long before these patterns solidify into the concrete, everyday events that the rest of the world can easily witness. This phenomenon is exactly what is meant by the phrase, "You see what others cannot." To be clear, we are not discussing supernatural clairvoyance or some esoteric gateway into invisible realms. The reality is far more fascinating, grounded, and scientifically verifiable than any of those concepts. Before the quantum field manifests any definite outcome in our physical reality, that impending event exists merely as pure potential. It lingers as a probability, an energetic blueprint within the field that has yet to condense into a tangible, physical form. The typical human observer is completely blind to this initial stage of probability, their primary instrument of perception comprising their nervous system, the electromagnetic aura of their physical body, and their overall internal alignment lacks the necessary refinement to pick up signals at such a delicate frequency. Consequently, they only recognize an occurrence after it has fully materialized into reality, long after the vast quantum possibilities have collapsed into the single, inevitable outcome that was quietly assembling behind the scenes. Conversely, the conscious observer who has successfully mastered the specific quantum state we are exploring today gains the ability to perceive these shifts beforehand. This is not an infallible process. They might not see the future with absolute, flawless clarity every single time. However, they tap into this awareness with sufficient reliability to completely revolutionize the way they maneuver through their existence. It fundamentally alters how they interpret complex situations, read the true intentions of people, sense shifting directions, and evaluate unfolding opportunities. It defines their capability to walk into a quiet room and instantly decipher its energetic atmosphere before a single word is exchanged, or to deeply understand the trajectory of a situation long before the final results are set in stone. Before we dive deeper into this concept, I want to establish complete transparency with you. The journey of this video is deliberately structured to culminate in a highly specific, actionable practice at the very end, a tangible exercise you can immediately implement tonight. This isn't merely a gimmick to keep you watching. The comprehensive breakdown that precedes this exercise provides the essential foundational context. Without this deep understanding, the practice would merely be another fleeting technique you try once and quickly discard. Therefore, I urge you to stay with me until the conclusion. The framework I am preparing to share is, without a doubt, the most pragmatic and applicable tool I have ever presented on this platform. The unique condition referenced in the title of this discussion is scientifically known as the coherence of the observer. We must be careful not to confuse this with the casual, everyday definition of coherence, which usually just implies being highly organized, articulate, or having a clear, focused mind. Instead, we are looking at coherence strictly through the rigid lens of quantum mechanics. In this highly specialized state, the various rhythmic and oscillating systems operating within the human body cease to function as isolated mechanisms. The powerful electromagnetic field generated by the heart, the rapid electrical firing across the nervous network, the steady tempo of respiration, and the dominant brainwave frequencies stop operating independently. Instead, they become profoundly synchronized, securing themselves into a remarkably stable and unified harmonic phase. The entire biological and energetic machine begins to vibrate as one singular, cohesive entity, rather than a collection of disjointed, competing components. The moment a quantum system enters this state of absolute coherence, a profound transformation occurs regarding its overall sensitivity. The critical ratio between clear signal and background noise shifts in a dramatic fashion. Subtle external inputs and delicate environmental cues that were once hopelessly drowned out by the static of internal mental and emotional fragmentation suddenly become vividly detectable. Vital information, which has perpetually existed within the surrounding energetic field, but remained completely invisible to an unaligned, fragmented individual, finally starts to consciously register in the mind. This precise biological and quantum alignment is the underlying mechanical reality behind what society loosely labels as heightened intuition. It explains the seemingly miraculous ability to recognize complex patterns far beyond what logical, available data should permit. It accounts for that inexplicable, profound sense of inner knowing that strikes you long before any physical evidence appears to confirm it. Again, there is absolutely nothing supernatural about this process. It can be best understood by comparing it to the stark contrast between a radio drowning in deafening static and one that has been expertly calibrated to a precise frequency. The station's broadcast was continuously transmitting through the airwaves all along. However, it is the precise tuning of the receiver that dictates whether the message actually gets through. Throughout my own journey, I have managed to access this elevated state of coherence frequently and consistently enough to intimately understand its internal mechanics and exactly how it physically feels from the inside. The perceptual shifts it triggers are fundamentally, radically different from your standard, day-to-day waking consciousness. This profound difference doesn't occur because some magical new capability has been added to your mind. Rather, it happens because the overwhelming internal static that constantly jams your receptive signals drops significantly below a critical threshold. Once that internal noise fades, the profound truths that were always hovering right in front of you become perfectly legible. Naturally, the ultimate question becomes, how can we deliberately and dependably induce this optimized state? We are not aiming for fleeting, accidental moments of clarity. Nor are we satisfied with only achieving this during deep, isolated meditation sessions. The goal is to summon this coherence on demand, right in the midst of a chaotic, ordinary day, precisely when the quantum field is actively revealing a truth that the rest of the oblivious crowd around you has utterly failed to notice. I encourage you to pause for a moment and engage in the comment section below. Have you ever possessed an absolute, unshakable? I am not talking about a random guess. I am referring to a deep, resonant knowing in your bones. Please share your experience in just one sentence. The individuals reading and writing those reflections in the comments are describing the exact phenomenon and the precise quantum state that this entire presentation is dedicated to exploring. It is a fundamental truth that the quantum field absolutely does not generate a uniform, identical reality for every single observer. This statement is not merely some abstract philosophical musing. It is a direct, inescapable implication derived from hard physics, highlighting the undeniable relationship between the internal condition of the individual observing and the external reality that ultimately gets projected. Prior to the moment a quantum system is consciously measured or observed, it comfortably rests in a state of superposition. In this infinite realm, every single conceivable outcome and potential reality exists simultaneously. The very act of conscious observation is the catalyst that forces that infinite superposition to collapse into one definitive, singular reality. Crucially, the mathematical probability dictating which specific outcome will ultimately emerge is never predetermined. Instead, it is actively molded by the dynamic, ongoing interaction between the quantum system itself and the individual observing it. Scientific experiments have definitively proven that different individuals, when observing the exact same quantum system but operating from entirely different internal states, do not produce identical realities. The data extracted from these studies was so undeniable and unambiguous that it forced the scientific community to discard the long-held assumption that a single, objective reality exists entirely independent of the person watching it. For the individual who has successfully anchored themselves in a state of true coherence, the implications of this physics principle are profound. A coherent observer does not engage with the surrounding energetic field through a distorted lens of mental static, emotional chaos, or physiological fragmentation. Instead, their interaction is rooted in a foundation of deeply stabilized, highly ordered sensitivity. Because of this pristine internal environment, the quantum field reacts to them in a fundamentally different manner than it would to someone whose energy is scattered. This phenomenon does not occur because the universe deems the coherent person more deserving of favorable outcomes. Rather, it happens because their finely tuned system is processing the energetic field at such an incredibly high resolution that they can literally sense the architecture of reality assembling itself. They are intercepting the wave of pure probability long before it narrows down and solidifies into a single, inescapable physical fact. When you witness an individual navigating the world from this elevated state, their actions appear almost magical to the untrained eye. To an outsider, it looks as though they possess an unfathomable level of judgment, a superhuman capacity for pattern recognition that completely defies the limited logical data presented to them, or an uncanny knack for always standing in the exact right place before anyone else even realizes that location is important. Yet, the underlying truth is purely biological and quantum mechanical. What you are actually witnessing is a human nervous system running with such pristine clarity that it can intercept environmental signals while those events are still hovering in the fluid realm of pure potential, rather than reacting to them as established physical facts. This is the exact, literal definition of seeing what others cannot. This brings us to a critical layer of perception that almost all mainstream conversations completely overlook. The physical body fundamentally perceives the quantum field significantly faster than the conscious intellect ever could. The human nervous system is designed to absorb and synthesize environmental data at processing speeds that completely bypass real-time conscious thought. Our enteric nervous system, often referred to as our gut, evaluates external signals entirely independent of our brain's cognitive functions. Simultaneously, the powerful electromagnetic field generated by the human heart is constantly scanning for subtle shifts in the surrounding atmosphere, immediately feeding that rich, patterned data back into the nervous network long before the brain has even begun to formulate a coherent thought about the situation. I want to stress that this is not mystical New Age philosophy. This is the literal, anatomical architecture of your biological machinery. The physical body was explicitly engineered by evolution to act as an incredibly hypersensitive radar precisely because the conscious, analytical brain is notoriously slow and clumsy. By the time you consciously register a thought or make a judgment, your physical vessel has already absorbed the critical data and initiated a biological response. Unfortunately, modern conditioning has taught the vast majority of society to completely override this brilliant internal radar. People are trained to dismiss their physiological warnings as irrelevant noise, elevating the slow, plodding assessments of the logical brain over the instantaneous, highly accurate data the body was already gathering. The coherent observer, however, has successfully inverted this flawed hierarchy. They haven't discarded their analytical intellect. Rather, they have trained themselves to decode the body's raw, unfiltered alerts before the mind has a chance to step in and dilute the truth with logic and overinterpretation. In my own lived experience, I recognize this phenomenon through highly specific, visceral bodily sensations that strike me long before my brain can explain why they are happening. It might manifest as a profound sensation of expansion or contraction tight within my chest the moment I step into a new room or a complex situation. It could be a sudden, subtle shift in the cadence and texture of my breathing that occurs fractions of a second before my mind makes a conscious assessment. Or it might be an undeniable, physical pull urging me to take a specific direction, an impulse that registers deep within my tissues well before I have formulated a logical, strategic reason to walk that way. Let me be clear. These are not ambiguous, fleeting emotions or vague feelings. They are incredibly precise, data-rich signals, Mastering the ability to accurately translate this somatic language is arguably the most valuable, highly practical asset you gain from maintaining a coherent state. Your physical body is, without question, the most advanced, highest resolution instrument you will ever possess for detecting shifts in the quantum field. The only question that remains is whether you are willing to learn its native tongue before the chaotic noise of standard human consciousness scrambles the message into something far less precise. Armed with this bodily alignment, the coherent observer begins to notice a distinct phenomenon that everyone else in the exact same situation remains completely blind to. They perceive the underlying pattern long before the actual event takes place. Every single occurrence that eventually manifests in our physical world originally started as an invisible blueprint in the field, a delicate configuration of shifting probabilities, steadily gaining momentum toward a specific point of collapse, long before it arrived as a tangible, measurable reality. Think about the events that shape our lives, a crucial conversation that suddenly goes off the rails, a massive opportunity that seemingly appears out of nowhere, a dynamic shift in a close relationship, or a split-second choice that ends up altering the course of a career. Not a single one of these moments materialized out of thin air. They were all preceded by an energetic pattern taking shape in the field. The average observer only ever detects the final event. They witness what physically happened. They intellectually analyze the fallout, and then they try to formulate a response. Because their entire reality is based on reacting to an event after it has already solidified into physical form, they are perpetually living one step behind the curve, entirely missing what the field was broadcasting right before the event arrived. In stark contrast, the coherent observer does not focus on the event itself. They track the underlying pattern. They sense the energetic scaffolding that was quietly being erected before the outcome became inevitable and specific. They feel the exact direction the quantum field was moving before it finally reached its destination. This is precisely why their awareness appears supernatural to outsiders. By the time the rest of the world finally sees the event, it is already old news to the coherent observer, because they saw it when it was nothing more than a whisper of a direction. In highly practical terms, this profound capability simply manifests as the absolute certainty of knowing something is true, well before you have any logical explanation as to why you know it. This profound awareness manifests as an undeniable sensation that a particular scenario is hurtling toward a definitive conclusion long before any tangible proof surfaces to validate your hypothesis. It grants you the strategic advantage of positioning yourself at the final destination before the momentum even arrives there, rather than frantically scrambling to react to where things currently are. Let me clarify. This has absolutely nothing to do with psychic fortune-telling. It is the highly precise art of field reading executed from a deeply coherent baseline. It is the fundamental difference between passively staring at a body of water and intuitively understanding the exact, invisible pull of the underwater currents before you ever dip your toe into the river. This brings us perfectly to the highlighted viewer comment for today's session, which posed a remarkable twofold question. Who or what exactly is the observer? And do I revert into a wave of pure possibility if I am not being observed? I spent a considerable amount of time contemplating this inquiry because a passing, superficial response simply would not do it justice. Regarding the first half, identifying the observer, this is the exact paradox that has successfully baffled the brightest minds in quantum physics for over a century. Despite relentless efforts, every attempt to pinpoint a physical observer within the material system inevitably triggers an endless, frustrating loop of infinite regress, measuring the measurement, observing the observer, the universe attempting to catch a glimpse of itself looking. My most honest, distilled conclusion is this: the observer is not a physical object hiding somewhere inside the machinery. Rather, the observer is a phenomenon. It is exactly what the system does the moment it attains a critical threshold of internal complexity and coherence, allowing it to become fully self-aware. Consciousness is not a localized, physical mass sitting inside your skull, the way a biological tumor resides in physical tissue. Instead, it is the profound event that occurs when a quantum entity reaches such a supreme level of integration that the universal field finally begins to experience and deeply know itself through that specific biological vessel. The second half of that viewer's inquiry is perhaps even more mesmerizing. Do I turn into a possibility wave if not observed? From a strictly orthodox, quantum mechanical perspective, the answer is a resounding yes. In the vast, unmeasured spaces between conscious observations, any quantum system naturally dissolves back into a state of infinite superposition, where every conceivable state of being exists all at once. The singular, definitive reality only snaps into existence the exact millisecond an observation is made. But here is where this principle transcends dry physics and becomes fiercely relevant to your daily life. If you accept that you yourself are a complex quantum system, which you absolutely are, and if your fundamental state between interactions is genuinely fluid and undetermined, then the specific iteration of you that materializes during any given interaction is heavily influenced by the internal state of the person observing you. Therefore, who is looking at you fundamentally alters reality, not just as a matter of social dynamics, but as a hard, quantum mechanical truth. Even more crucially, this means that how you observe yourself carries the most immense weight of all. You are, without question, the most relentless, consistent observer of your own quantum state. I want you to drop down into the comments right now and answer this. How do you genuinely observe yourself? I am not asking about the polished, curated mask you wear for the public. I am asking about the raw, unfiltered version of yourself that you collapse into the moment you are alone and looking inward. Your honest answer to that question is the most direct, uncompromising explanation for why your life currently looks the exact way it does. The dividing line separating the master observer, the one who intercepts patterns before they solidify into physical events, and the ordinary observer who merely reacts to the aftermath, is not a matter of raw intellect. It is not about possessing a passive, delicate sensitivity, nor is it some genetic lottery ticket bestowed upon a lucky few. It boils down entirely to cultivating a highly specific, deeply refined quality of attention. For the average individual, attention is overwhelmingly reactive. It is constantly hijacked by whatever is the loudest, the most urgent, or the most immediately threatening to their physical survival or social standing. While this reactive setting is biologically efficient for basic survival, it traps the individual in a perpetual time loop, forcing them to constantly react to the past events that have already finished happening, rather than reading the architecture of what is currently building in the background. By stark contrast, the coherent observer has rigorously disciplined their attention to anchor itself in a place of profound rest. They establish an immovable, stable center of gravity, where external stimuli are consciously acknowledged without the observer ever getting dragged into the drama or identifying with the trigger. A stimulus hits. The observer clearly logs the data, and yet they remain perfectly grounded at their resting point, instead of emotionally merging with the chaos. From this elevated vantage point of unshakable stability, the surrounding energetic field becomes an open book, readable in ways that are physically impossible when a person is trapped in a state of constant, frantic reaction. The subtle, overarching patterns that are usually smothered by the deafening noise of reactive panic suddenly become vividly clear. The underlying trajectory of any situation becomes glaringly obvious, long before the final outcome actually arrives. Do not mistake this for a state of passive detachment. It is, in fact, an extraordinarily hyperactive and demanding condition. It requires exponentially more internal fortitude than simply reacting to your environment, precisely because you are tasked with holding a rock-solid, stable position while enduring the relentless, crushing pressure of a world actively trying to pull you out of your center. Think of it as the profound difference between a perfectly still body of water and a pool violently churning with agitation. Both contain the exact same substance, but only the still water has the capacity to reflect the truth of the world above it with perfect, glass-like clarity. The agitated water violently distorts every single image it attempts to capture. Mastering this quantum state is ultimately about mastering your own internal stillness, while the surrounding field furiously moves around you. It is never about retreating or hiding from the world. It is about maintaining absolute, unshakable stability within it. From that impenetrable calm, the secret machinations of the universe reveal themselves at a resolution that a frantic, reactive mind could never hope to process. And this brings us exactly to the pivotal moment I promised at the very beginning of our journey today. What we are about to transition into is not some recycled, superficial technique borrowed from a self-help manual. Here is the direct, actionable culmination of everything we have rigorously explored in this session. I am going to share 3 highly specific protocols designed to systematically cultivate the coherent observer state. When applied with dedication, these exercises will transform this profound mode of perception from a fleeting, accidental occurrence into a deeply reliable, consistent baseline. Protocol 1. Anchoring the point of rest. Dedicate 10 unbroken minutes each day to sit in a posture that requires absolutely zero physical exertion. Gently close your eyes. Your primary objective is to locate that profound center of awareness that exists entirely independent of your swirling thoughts, your physical sensations, and your emotional fluctuations. You are searching for the infinite, quiet space that actually houses these phenomena. Do not focus on the chaotic content of your experience. Focus entirely on the silent container of that experience. Anchor your absolute attention to this central resting point. Naturally, the mind will generate thoughts that is biologically inevitable. Acknowledge them as passing data, but refuse to emotionally merge with them. Instantly pull your focus back to the anchor. Understand that this is not a traditional meditation meant to soothe or relax you. This is rigorous, neurological training designed to teach the observer how to hold its ground while bombarded by stimuli. Even if a session feels incredibly distracted, you are still actively forging the internal stability required to accurately read the quantum field. Protocol 2. Navigating the pre-collapse horizon. Before you step into any consequential interaction or scenario, whether that is a critical meeting, a heavy conversation, or a monumental decision, carve out 3 minutes of absolute stillness. Direct your unwavering attention straight into the center of your chest. Do not allow your brain to strategically intellectualize the upcoming event. Instead, feel the raw, energetic atmosphere surrounding it. Pay close attention to what surfaces purely as visceral sensation, as an energetic directional pull, or as a distinct feeling of expansion or contraction within your body. Capture this data before your logical mind has a chance to step in and sanitize the assessment. Immediately document what you physically registered on a piece of paper. Later, once the actual situation has fully resolved, compare your initial bodily sensations with the final physical outcome. Over time, this deliberate practice radically strengthens your capacity to trust and accurately decode the field's subtle signals before they collapse into solid reality. Protocol 3. The perpetual observer check. Throughout the course of your day, at entirely random intervals, pause and ask yourself one singular, piercing question. Who is the entity actually doing the observing right now? Do not ask what you are currently thinking or how you are presently feeling. Ask yourself who is the underlying presence silently witnessing all of this activity. This question does not require a logical answer. The mere act of asking it instantaneously yanks your attention away from the chaotic contents of your life and redirects it straight into the pure awareness that holds those contents. When executed with relentless consistency, this tiny micro-shift gradually solidifies the foundational resting point of the observer. And make no mistake, possessing a rock-solid internal anchor is the bedrock upon which all advanced perception is built. I personally engage in variations of these 3 protocols every single day. I do not do this out of some rigid, forced sense of discipline. I do it because the pristine quality of perception they unlock is so vastly superior to standard waking consciousness that reverting to an uncalibrated, fragmented state is simply no longer an acceptable option for me. Head down to the comments right now and tell me which of these 3 protocols you are going to implement first. Do not pick the one that intellectually sounds the most fascinating. Pick the one your nervous system genuinely feels ready to tackle. That inherent readiness is, in itself, profound feedback from the field, and I want to know exactly what it is communicating to you. Hello, my quantum family. How is everyone doing? It is wonderful to connect with you all again. I wanted to step in personally before we officially wrap up today's broadcast, because the intensive journey we just navigated together over the last 20+ minutes serves as the exact foundation for a comprehensive tool I have engineered specifically for you. It is called the Quantum Transition Field Guide. It spans 89 densely packed pages, and I want to explain exactly what it does before I point you to it. Everything we dissected today, the coherent observer, intercepting patterns before events, establishing a physiological resting point, and utilizing the human body as an advanced instrument, represents the theoretical framework, the map, so to speak. However, a map is utterly useless if you cannot pinpoint your own current coordinates. The vast majority of individuals striving to unlock this state find themselves trapped in the messy, disorienting middle of a major transition, making it incredibly difficult to view their own progress with any true clarity. That is precisely why this guide exists. It meticulously breaks down the nuanced stages of a quantum transition from an internal perspective. It details exactly what each phase triggers within your physical body and your daily lived experience. It explains why your old coping mechanisms suddenly fail, and it outlines exactly what actually sustains a state of deep coherence when everything around you is rapidly shifting. Inside, you will discover 5 highly practical integration protocols and a complete 30-day navigation manual designed for those who are no longer just passively studying this material, but are actively living in the trenches of it. I wrote this entire manual because I was forced to navigate my own radical transition entirely blind, without any structural guidance, utterly confused as to why my perceptual abilities were mutating or what the bizarre physical symptoms in my body were trying to warn me about. If the concepts in this video resonated with an experience you are currently enduring, this resource was forged exclusively for you. You can find the direct link down in the description box below, and it is currently available at a special launch price. If the overarching themes of this channel have been positively impacting your life, I guarantee you will find that this guide dives leagues deeper than anything I could possibly condense into a single video presentation. I want to express my deepest gratitude to you for being here, for contributing to this incredible community, and for valuing your own evolution enough to stick with me until the very final second. I truly hope this presentation served you well. If you are eager to continue expanding your mastery of quantum techniques, simply click or tap on the video that is surfacing on your screen right now. Thank you once again for your time, and I will see you in the next installment of Quantum Reflex.